Hi, everyone. Welcome to DMG's Bootstraps in Business, and I'm Savannah Jones with Stephen Hodges, and today we're speaking with Betsy Johnson, who served in the private sector as a pilot, a business owner, and so much more, and a couple of decades as a Democrat in the House and most recently the Senate, and now she is taking a run at Oregon's governor. So Betsy, tell us a little bit about you. Give us a snapshot of where you've been and where you're heading.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I grew up in Central Oregon. I was born in Bend because when I made my appearance, there was no hospital in Redmond. But I grew up in Redmond. My father was in the lumber business, and my mother did all the things that you're supposed to do. Everybody moved there right after World War II, and they were putting together a hospital and putting together the infrastructure and the character of Redmond. My mother served on the school board and did the Girl Scouts and all that kind of stuff. She later went on to serve 4 governors, Republicans and Democrats, and education policy boards, notably the State Board of Higher Education. In our house, public service was practiced and valued. And so my father served in the legislature during the McCall years. I actually was fetched up in a Republican household. So when I went down to register to vote, it was not, how did you register? It was, did you register? And then later, as the R's moved farther and farther away from some of the values that I had, I abandoned the R's and ended up re-registering as a D. Ted Ferrioli, a senator, used to call me a BFD. And I thought, yeah, same to you, fellow, until I found out that BFD meant business-friendly Democrat. But I grew up in Central Oregon, went away to school, came back here to law school, worked for the Multnomah County courts. I worked in the jail for 4 years because I was on the 4-year plan in law school. It gave me a vocabulary that would make a pirate blush. Knew I didn't want to practice law, flew for and operated a helicopter company for almost 20 years. We were the prime contractor to the U.S. Geological Survey on Mount St. Helens. Our little company motto was, your wallet, we haul it. And so we did all sorts of things. We flew bad bears. We changed the latrine on the top of Mount Rainier. We built power lines. We logged. We made movies. So we did all kinds of stuff with the helicopter company. And then the House seat came open. I had just finished service on a corporate board that did not allow partisan political participation. The seat was open. I ran, elected 3 times to the House. 10 days into my 3rd term, the senator was appointed to a remunerative board, and I was unanimously appointed in 2005 to go to the Senate. And then I earned election from 2005 until I resigned in December of last year. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. My father taught both my sister and me how to fly. Airplanes. I don't think he ever anticipated that she would do a couple of tours on the U.S. aerobatic team, and I would represent the United States flying in Europe and what was then the Soviet Union. My sister was trained as a nurse and ended up flying a jet for a bank, and I graduated law school the same day the Trailblazers won the championship and ended up flying and then going into the legislature. So that's a little bit about me. I live in beautiful downtown Scappoose with my husband of nearly 36 years, and am now hoping to be Oregon's next governor.
And what, I've listened to a lot of your interviews and some of your speeches that you've given. Tell our viewers, what are the biggest challenges facing Oregon businesses right now, particularly?
Well, I would say that it is the quote business climate in this state. The legislature and this governor have not paid much attention to business development. In fact, I would say that the legislature is openly hostile to jobs and job creators. They want the tax money, but they have not gone out of their way to help businesses. The regulatory environment, in my view, does its best to prohibit innovation and punish growth. We permit sequentially. We've got agencies that instead of starting at yes, they start at no. I think the regulatory environment right now is exceedingly heavy-handed. We've got politicians who think they know how to run businesses and that they can build houses and make better widgets and sell products better than business owners. I mean, repeatedly, I've said that politicians don't build houses, home builders do. But the regulatory environment, particularly in the natural resources area, is so complicated and so hard to get permits. it is my observation that the bureaucrats issuing permits, time and money mean nothing to them. And particularly during COVID, I mean, state government has not come back to work yet. And so if I pulled out my phone and called state agencies, you're just as liable to get a recording that says, we're still out due to COVID. You can leave a message and we'll call you back. Hidden parentheses, you should live so long. It is just too difficult to do business in this state. We also don't have the tools in our toolbox that many other states have. It's no secret. I've been talking to a lot of high net worth Oregonians as I've been pursuing this run for governor. And the number that have fled this state due to the tax environment, particularly in Multnomah County, and Henderson, Nevada, and Idaho, and Austin, Texas must be so full of Portland expatriates that you couldn't roll a bowling ball down the street and not hit somebody from Portland. Plus, Portland has lost, I'm looking out the window, and Portland has lost much of its luster, and our international reputation has been tarnished. I think people are leery about moving here. We've got an affordability crisis. We can't have a livable Oregon if it's not an affordable Oregon. And so when you ask what are the biggest challenges, those are just some of the ones that are top of mind. We need a functional economic development department, not sort of the dumping grounds for programs that nobody can figure out where else to put. And we've got to have tools in our toolbox that I mentioned, like tax abatements, enterprise zones, the things that certain members of the very progressive left try every legislative session to take away. And I think about New York, North Carolina, Michigan to some degree, that have these active recruitment and retention efforts. We don't seem to pay the same attention to our businesses. We just make the assumption they're always going to be there. I don't think state government asks very often, what does the customer need?
Well, and that's a great point I think that you make. I've always asked the question, if our bread and butter for income for the state of Oregon is, income tax, why wouldn't we be more business friendly, right? We should want a lot of jobs in Oregon. It doesn't help us to have them go out. You brought something up in the first debate that I want to hit on. I thought it was a really good point that you had made when you said pick up the phone. They were talking about Intel, and I could tell that was the first time I'd seen a governor or a candidate come out that strong and yell at somebody. And I thought it was needed. Where did that passion, has that been building for a while? Have you been watching Oregon deteriorate when it comes to business and what we're doing, not answering the phone of somebody like Intel?
Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm running. I think I could have handily been elected to my Senate seat. And I don't mean to sound braggadocio about that, but I was the Republican the last time I ran. I won the Republican write-in, I won the Democratic nomination, and I won the Independent Party, capital I, Independent. And I won with a big percentage of the vote. I could have continued to do that, but as a daughter of Oregon, watching this place deteriorate, watching state government turn on our core industries like forestry, what the Department of Forestry is doing right now, setting aside this habitat conservation plan that's going to put a lot of timber out of limits. I was out at the Elgin veneer mill. It's a Boise Cascade facility. And I asked them, what are the biggest challenges facing your operation? And their answer was sustainable timber supply. We change the rules constantly. We budget in a way that we dip and dive with the vicissitudes of the business cycle. We don't have durable, sustainable budgets that allow, say, the healthcare industry to make the investments in workforce that they need because they're not sure what their reimbursement architecture is going to look like at the next long session. So I have been very frustrated. And then any trip to downtown Portland will tell you that the business community here is under siege. In the building where I'm in right now, there's a little florist shop right next door. And I mean a little tiny florist shop owned by a nice older lady. The window's just gratuitously broken out. the coffee shop at the end of the street, the windows broken out and the coffee shop vandalized. The other direction, the Portland Outdoor Store that's been here for more than 100 years, campers all over the place, their windows knocked out. And they're not sure how much longer they can survive. Margulis Jewelers closing up, and other high-end boutique retail for women, mercantile, boarded up. The gratuitous violence that costs businesses money. Every morning I turn on the TV and it's what store got robbed, what windows got knocked out. I've had 4 windows broken in downtown Portland. Businesses tell me that their employees don't want to be down here because they're assaulted on the street. I've maintained that if Portland fails, Oregon can't succeed. And right now, Portland is failing by many measures. So I guess I was prompted to run in no small measure to shine a very bright light on the fact that we have damn well better be nice to our businesses, help them when we can. And as I said in the debate, pick up the phone. As governor, I would have the CEOs of our major employers on speed dial. Hi, how's it going today? What do you need? The fact that Intel left when they apparently had been sending up signals. And as I said in the debate where there was some speculation by Tina Kotek about, gee, I wonder why they went. I actually talked to the manager of the Intel plant. I knew why they went. And it was as simple as government didn't act like we knew or should have known what the customer wanted. And what the customer wanted was a little more land to be able to expand and continue to invest in capital improvements and create jobs. It's shameful that that happened.
Agreed. What would your plan be then to bring businesses either back home or to Oregon?
Well, let me start with a couple of stories. Stop making it so difficult to be here. Let's talk on the retention side, first of all. At the invitation of some Eastern Oregon legislators, when I was still the co-chair of Ways and Means and was still a senator, I was invited to come over and try to get DEQ off Boise Cascades back, measuring a degree of dioxin in a settling pond that was not measurable in drinking water, and changing the rules constantly. Those are 230 jobs in a very rural part of Oregon, with all of the ancillary jobs that go with the truck drivers, the value added to after the veneers stripped off the poles that remain, the shippers in and out. So 230 direct mill jobs threatened by DEQ, first of all, going radio silent and not talking to the company. And I interfered at that point and said, this is just not acceptable. You cannot have regulators not talking to the regulated community. And then you can't have regulators changing the rules all the time. And then you can't have regulators with this heavy-handed, retaliatory, punitive approach to business. And the story for me goes on and on and on. We celebrate our craft brewers and yet have made it difficult for them to dispose of some of the water used in fermentation. We have water problems in irrigated agriculture in the Umatilla Basin, and I was heavily involved with trying to get that process through the bureaucracy of our Water Resources Department. And Water Resources almost screwed that deal up. Here was a case where farmers were so desperate to be able to sequester water from the Columbia in high flow times that they actually financially leveraged their own properties to be able to build water infrastructure. And how do we reward them? We make permitting more difficult. It's that sort of stuff. We've got to respect the fact that in local places, people come together, they figure out solutions. And the Salem one-size-fits-all answer doesn't, I mean, Klamath water problems are not the Umatilla Basin's water problems. It goes back to the fact that a governor has got to recognize that we've got all these different economic opportunities throughout the state. We are not one place. So I've said over and over again, I don't care if you're making silicon chips, wood chips, paper, potato chips, or fish and chips. the governor has got to recognize that we have different economic zones, and those companies and those employees need help uniquely fitted to the character of their place. So I would work strenuously with businesses and then job creating entities like ports and other economic regions to say, what do you guys need and how can the state be a reliable, durable partner?
Well, there's a lot of frustration. You can hear it in your voice, and you certainly hear it from residents of Oregon and specifically business owners. So that level of frustration translates across all levels, and you did touch on a lot of our problems with the crime and definitely homelessness and trying to get these businesses in and keep them here. One of the frustrations is the C.A.T tax. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and your take on that?
Sure. The C.A.T tax was negotiated too hastily. We were making public policy in a building that was not open to the public. Oregon Business and Industries was split on what they wanted the legislature to do with respect to the C.A.T tax. So when some of us went to OBI and said, what's your take? They didn't have a clear position. Business had allowed themselves to be divided because they were terrified of ballot measure or something that would have been worse. I don't think the modeling for the C.A.T tax was widely shared so that people understood its cascading effect. Education was screaming for an educated workforce, meaning invest more in the schools. There had been this elaborate tour that legislators had taken trying to suss out what local schools needed throughout the state. And so the C.A.T tax came rolling towards us. And I have to say, I voted for it. It's the worst vote I cast in 20 years. I own it. And as governor, I would do whatever I could to modify, mitigate, repeal, and start again. The other thing that we did with the C.A.T tax that was very bad was that we ended up passing it through to education writ large without establishing the benchmarks from which we were going to measure success. And so the amount of money that has come through the legislature, I think the legislature has not been as diligent in setting those benchmarks so that Oregonian taxpayers know that they're getting value for their investment and that we're actually moving the dial. Education is a perfect example. When our kids don't meet the standards, what do? Change the standards. Lowered, not with my help. But to go back to the C.A.T tax is poorly constructed. It's hindering business. It's driving business out of Oregon. We did a meet and greet in Lebanon last night, and I talked to a cattle broker who is at his wit's end in dealing with the C.A.T tax. The C.A.T tax was a mistake. I own it. I hope people would appreciate the fact that their next governor says, this was bad. I was participatory in it, and I feel a compelling obligation to fix it.
So with that, I'm gonna ask a question here about, speaking of businesses, bringing more business. The Portland Diamond Project, trying to bring Major League Baseball to Portland, or Oregon, I should say. They're actually getting some steam. I know them pretty well. Besides what is already, in Salem right now for them to bring a team here, would you be willing to, as a governor, get behind even more so to bring Major League Baseball to Oregon?
Sure, but let me caveat that. I don't know what the structure of the deal looks like right now. When I was still in the House, there was a proposal to bring baseball, and my recollection of it was with heavy subsidization. I would assume that a project like bringing Major League Baseball here is a mosaic of things that all have to fit together. You got to find the land, then you've got to get through the permitting, then you've got to deal with all the regulatory stuff. If it's in Multnomah County, how are the players' salaries treated? Right? There are lots of elements to the deal that I don't know. But I think what you're asking me is, as governor, would I be a cheerleader for trying to bring Major League Baseball here? You bet. I even know the two sites that I'd take a look at. One of them is the old Esco spot up off Vaughan.
Yep. That was the old baseball field.
Wasn't it? I didn't know that.
Yeah. 1909, I think. Yeah, years and years.
1909. I was only in third grade, so I wasn't.
That's great.
The other one is the post office site. I've heard that there might be an east side site. So I don't know all the sites that are under consideration.
Right. And you would have to know. I mean, that's kind of unfair. You know, obviously, I think they're looking. I mean, I have no idea, exactly where they would put it. I know that they know. And I think there are, challenges with Portland, downtown Portland for sure. And probably for the same reasons you had actually just talked about, why businesses are looking to maybe move, right? I think they've had some challenges with Portland as well for the same reasons. Portland definitely has a black eye, to when it comes to the rest of the country, how they're looking at us. Everybody knows that. So, yeah, I mean, I totally understand. As far as the jobs go, I think, that was where my question's coming from. I think it could help with, creation of jobs. When you look at a project like that, because it's not just a baseball stadium, it's a whole development around it, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
There was skepticism, I think, in some quarters when Major League Soccer was being considered.
Right.
And now the Timbers, I mean, cash registers ring like church bells. Getting tickets to the Timbers is difficult. Timber Joey came down to the legislature and was treated like visiting royalty. So there's that cascading effect of a big project like that. I think what you're really asking, though, is would you be a cheerleader for business and business development and opportunity and jobs? And you're damn straight I would be is the answer. Kate Brown has had other focus. She just hasn't focused on business development. But I would be very eager to lead delegations to try to recruit business. I recall my husband, who's a small business guy, getting a letter from the governor of Idaho saying, why don't you come and look here? I don't know what Oregon is doing in terms of recruitment, or are we just waiting for something to fall across the transom? I've heard stories in California when Governor Schwarzenegger was there of actually dispatching people in helicopters to go meet visiting execs and make them feel like they're welcome. A company I was courting to build on a greenfield site out in Columbia County ended up looking at a building that was completely finished in Gresham. And I liked the CEO of the company. We talked many times. I wish he'd come to Columbia County, but he didn't. So I had taken an interest in his company, and I rang him up the other day and said, how's it going out in your Gresham building? And he said, I fled Oregon. I'm in Austin, Texas. And when I arrived, the first thing that happened is their business development people showed up and said, how can we help you? Here's the matrix of what you need for permitting. Here's our business opportunity menu. Would you avail yourself of any of these? He said they were falling all over themselves to try to make sure that he settled successfully in Austin.
Yeah, it is so true. I have to jump in. I mean, we do not. If we have economic development, nobody knows what they do. I don't even know if they know what they do. When we look at, I'm in advertising, we talk, to other other companies around the country. These states they're advertising to come there. They're advertising to bring the business. State of Oregon is silent. In fact, I met a person, I'm not going to throw them under a bus because they're very nice people, but I met somebody from our economic development. I'm like, what do you do? Well, we, help business. What business has ever come here? Like, I mean, either you're really bad at PR or you don't do anything. And that's how a lot of people, I feel that way. I don't think that's a political statement. I think that's just, what do they do?
They're bad at PR and telling people what they do. There are notable exceptions. I worked very closely with the OBDD, Oregon Business Development Department representative up in the 5 counties that I represented. And she's a rock star. She's a problem solver. She's a get to yes kind of person. She's an anomaly. they all ought to be that way. And I can't speak for others because I didn't deal as closely with them. But once upon a time, Governor Kitzhaber had come up with this notion of these regional solution teams that were out of Oregon Business Development Department, and they were supposed to be the table around which the major regulatory agencies sat. And if an applicant came in, they could troubleshoot what the applicant was going to need. Do you need access to the highway? So ODOT was there. Do you need workforce? So they were there. Do you need housing? So they were there. And unfortunately, under Kate Brown, the regional solution teams were assigned such lofty goals that they couldn't deliver, and they just kind of failed. I would revitalize that problem-solving nature so that if a major applicant came in, somebody sat down with them and gave them the permitting matrix and then walked them through it, and then rode herd on the agency heads, because the imprimatur of the governor is on these regional solution teams with the charge of help these people settle here. And don't think up the 27 reasons why you can't get to yes. Start at yes until you get to an insurmountable obstacle.
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing you say is we're a little bit broken here in Oregon, and you're looking to fix things. And there are templates. There are things that are actually working in other major cities across the United States. So we have a route to take. There are options. We can step in and follow the lead, or take the lead, because it's working in other cities across the U.S.
Absolutely. And Oregon has this kind of Oregon exceptionalism attitude. It's okay to go steal somebody else's good ideas. And I think we ought to identify around some core stuff that we do well. Oregon Business Development has taken a shot at that over time, but I think trying to revitalize our manufacturing sector. I was one of the responsible parties for putting together OMIC, the Oregon Manufacturing Innovation Center. It was modeled on a program in the UK called AMRC, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Center. The Advanced Manufacturing Research Center was so important to Central England that the Queen has visited there twice. And as one of the heads of the AMRC told me, the Queen visits countries, she doesn't visit companies, except she came to AMRC twice. So we have tried to model the AMRC that puts together business, academia, and government, and we added philanthropy to our mix. We have a charitable foundation that provides full rides through Oregon Tech in engineering. And we are starting in the grade schools and trying to move people up through community college. Portland Community College has built a campus in Columbia County right near OMIC. And so we have 500 developable acres that's now all serviced with very patient capital investors. The problems that they've been through helped drive me to the point that I thought Oregon is no longer business friendly. Anybody with a postage stamp can appeal a land use application. And actually go through this LUBA labyrinth, and the one out in Columbia County was actually taken to the voters. Most communities, when faced with a multi-million-dollar investment, would be doing handsprings to help, but we have these little pockets of no growth. It needs to stay exactly the way it was back in the McCall days. We've got to recognize the fact that during McCall's time, we had about 1 million people, and we've got about 4 now, and I'm rounding those numbers up. But it's business that's going to drive Oregon's success, and we have got to be a business-friendly place at all levels, but starting with state government. As governor, I'd take a serious look at the people running those agencies. Do we have can-do, want-to, will-do people who set the tone at the top and drive that attitude down into their employees? And I would submit that in some cases that ethos does not exist. I would drive it, and I would drive it hard. We have got to pick out those industry segments, manufacturing, I go back to again, where we have a long and distinguished history of, in the case of OMIC, hard metals manufacturing, and we ought to go back and celebrate that past. And particularly now in the timber business, where we're making value-added products out of stuff that used to be burned to scrap. We've got all these exotic new, the Ferris brothers building the new roof for PDX out of materials and processes and techniques that we couldn't have imagined 30 years ago. We ought to celebrate that. We ought to tell the world we're doing it.
I agree. And, speaking of which, and I know I want to be cognizant of time because I know you're on a schedule. I have a very important question. Reading an article actually came out, 8 months ago, about lithium mining in Oregon. And it was talking about how the deposits in Oregon are pretty deep. The question that I have, lithium mining, A, do you support it? B, what are your thoughts? I mean, there's differing opinions whether it's actually dirtier than drilling for oil. And I ask this question because, in Oregon, we don't allow offshore drilling. None of that's happening, but yet, mining lithium may be okay, but maybe actually dirtier for the environment. What are your thoughts on all of it? I'm probably not as educated as you are, so I would love to hear your take.
Well, the first thing is I don't know that much about it. Mine's about 100,000 feet. So I would start with it needs to be, if it's done, responsibly done, environmentally done, but listen to the locals. The locals are going to have the best idea of whether this is a good thing or not. What I have been told is that the deposits are very close to the surface, but I don't know much about the processes for getting lithium. I know that we are way too dependent on our political adversaries like China for rare earth. All of us are driving our fancy cars with computers in them. We all pull out our phones. As I understand it, lithium is an essential product, but I would need to know a whole lot more. And again, listening to the locals, I would rely very heavily on the state representative and the senator, Lynn Finley, from over in the Ontario area, because I think it's in that county where these deposits are. One of the applicants, and I don't even know how many applicants there are, has already pulled the plug on pursuing it any further because of a law that's on the books that would prohibit mining in the spot that they wanted. But my knowledge of it is pretty superficial. And I don't know what residual products are left behind if lithium is removed or what the processes for scrubbing lithium. I just don't know enough about it. I would listen very carefully to the locals and what fits with the character of their place and their reaction to the mining. But the sine qua non for me is it would have to be responsibly done and environmentally sound.
I think that's refreshing to hear. I mean, honestly, that you're willing to take the people that are there, that know, that understand all about the issue are being listened to. I think that's where some Oregonians feel that the government has completely abandoned them. They don't hear them. They don't listen to them. They don't care to.
Especially the farther east you go. This governor knows that there's Oregon east of Bend and south of Eugene. And the prevalent attitude that I hear from people that I talk to in those locations, and I've physically been to both places, east and south, and will go again, is that they feel abandoned by the process, disrespected, disenfranchised. I remember when C.A.T closed down the restaurants, and she had said they could all open and everybody was preparing for a big weekend and they were out buying comestibles and libations. And on Wednesday or Thursday, she said, no. I called her and I said, was there a restaurateur in the room when you made that decision who could have, I didn't talk directly to her, but to her policy people, who could have informed you of the impact? What if I'd bought 150 pounds of Dungeness crab legs and a pile of tenderloins that have a shelf life of about a nanosecond? Was somebody there to tell you about the impact? When the front of your house all disappears, the back of your house all disappears, you got to go find your cook again. And the answer was no. You got to do it with Oregonians, not to Oregonians. And so that goes back to the lithium mining. I would need to much more inform myself, and relying on the locals for that information, I think, is imperative.
That's fair. All right, I've got probably the most important question here coming. Savannah, you want me to do it or you want to do it?
You go ahead.
Is, in your opinion, and I know you are opinionated, is, in your opinion, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Hell no.
That's it. Right there. That is where we're
I'm in
ending
agreement
this show.
with you.
Right. Yep. Okay. I mean, there is meat and there is bread. I'm just asking a question because I know you're busy. The fact that you took the time to be here is unbelievable. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Betsy, before you go, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Oh, sure. The best place to find anything about the campaign, including some issue briefs, copy of a speech, chance to donate, you wouldn't want to miss that, is runbetsyrun.com. And we welcome people there. We're going to qualify for the ballot. I feel very optimistic about our chances of presenting a third alternative to Oregonians who are sick of the status quo, want a different direction. And for the first time, they now have the opportunity to pick a different direction. I believe I'm all that's standing between Tina Kotek and measuring the drapes at Mahonia Hall. And so we're going to give people a third option with the promise that we want to get Oregon out of the ditch. We all want to be proud of our place again. And I want to be the person that drives us back to that time when we were all really proud of our cool place.
Yeah, very cool place. And I would love to see it come back. This has been, a tough few years for sure. Anything that you want to add about your opponents? I mean, what would you say the biggest differentiator between you and Christine Drazen or Tina Kotek? Or you could go with...
or the historic race that we're going to have with three women.
Right.
Well, that's a given. The next governor of Oregon is going to be a woman, and that's cool. I think what differentiates me from Tina is that for 9 years, while Tina was Speaker of the House, we have spiraled into lawlessness and crime. One of my colleagues this morning saw a dead body on the streets. The police had just arrived and they were covering it with a cloth. That shouldn't be happening in downtown Portland. We have got to get back. And I'm afraid Tent City Tina has squandered the 9 years and the money that she's put in to try to clean up our streets. They're as bad as they have ever been. And Christine and I had kept the back channels open during her service in the House. And when I was in the Senate, I've stayed and fought with my caucus when she's been down poolside in Nevada. I think it took courage to stay on the floor of the Senate, toe to toe with the Senate president and my colleagues, and say, no, we're not going to put climate change economically on the backs of working class Oregonians. I think I've got the experience, the courage, and the character to deliver on the stuff that I'm talking about. I helped repurpose a former jail into a place of healing, hope, and recovery out at the Bybee Lakes Center, started OMIC from scratch. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so I'd like to inject a sense of urgency into getting Oregon back on track. Let's hold people accountable. Let's have budgets that are understandable. If people can't deliver, we need new people. And I hope I'm the governor that leads us back.
Impressive. I mean, I'm going to let you go on that because I know you have work to do, but you're very impressive to talk with. So thank you for today.
And lovely to meet you.
I had a good time.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun and informative. Thank you, as always, for checking out DMG's Bootstraps and Business. If you'd like to find out more about our guests, DMG, or these podcasts, just check out the show notes. Thank you.